All right, so yesterday we started the process of looking at um, what we call traditionally photoshopping, right? So we're going to use a series, and we learned a couple series of tools that allows us to make edits on an image that either enhances them, embellishes them, or even sometimes even change them completely. But in any form or fashion, it's changing the picture so that it looks the way that we want it to look. And we also discussed how good photoshopping, if you will, in quotation marks, good photoshopping is where you can't see or find the edit. So that's the goal. It's not just to make an edit because anybody can make an edit, but we want to make an edit that makes the audience question either whether it's like, is that real, or changes the image in a way that they would have never known the image looked otherwise, right? So that's what we did yesterday, and we're going to do a little bit of that review today. So I'm going to jump right into the first image that we looked at. Ignore that. I'm going to take a look at we're going to take a look at the first image that we looked at, and we started to look at the healing tools. So in that range of healing tools, we saw that there were a lot there, right? We have obviously the first one that we looked at was the red eye tool. We also have the spot healing brush tool, the healing brush patch tool, and the content aware move tool. So with this particular image, we can see there's a couple edits that need to take place, the first of which is the red eye. So with the red eye tool selected, all you do is simply click on the eye, and it desaturates that area, right? So that tool is specifically honing in on those red hues, and it's sucking the saturation out of that color. Would you mind getting that for me? Now, there's another way to do this edit, and kind of brings me to the next point, which when you guys are performing these type of edits, it really doesn't matter how you get there. It just matters that you got there. So it's no different than if I said, hey, we're going to meet up in Orlando. See you there tomorrow. There's lots of different ways you guys could get there. You could go down 75 to I-4. You could go the back way to 98 and then get on the I-4. You could go all the way up north through 75 to get on the turnpike to cut across the state to get to Orlando, right? Lots of different ways to get to Orlando. Doesn't matter how you get there as long as you got there, right? So in Photoshop, you guys have the ability to use any one of these sets of tools. What is the best tool? Well, it depends on the job. It depends on what you're comfortable with. Some tools are more efficient than others. Here's a good example of that. So again, the red eye tools are really quick, easy, click, click, right? 3 clicks. We click to select the tool. We clicked twice, once on each eye. The edit's done. However, we reviewed that this type of edit is a what type of edit? Destructive edits, right? So if you want to perform a non-destructive edit, we could still do that same edit, right? What we can do here is, and this is nothing new, this is all review. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to grab an adjustment layer, right? Right down here at the bottom of our layer screen. That half circle, okay? I'm going to select that. That's my adjustment layer. I'm going to add a hue and saturation adjustment, okay? Now with that adjustment layer, I want to take the saturation levels out of that image, but not the whole image. I want to do just the eyes, right? So, well, how do I do that? Well, we remember what this little icon is, right? This is my mask. So what I want to do here is I want to invert this mask, Control I, and then I'm going to paint in the white with my brush tool. There it is. On the eyes. Right? So if I zoom in on my mask here, I can see that I've painted in his eyes. Probably could have done a little better job there, but it's there. And now I can select the adjustment, and now I can desaturate that portion of the eye. There they go. Right? It's the same edit. However, this is a non-destructive edit, right? Those pixels are intact. All I have to do is turn this adjustment layer off, and those pixels come right back. So again, this is a non-destructive edit. So what's the best type of edit to use? Well, I don't know. What are you trying to accomplish? You know, that's your choice. Again, it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get there. However, some edit techniques take longer than others. Some are easier than others. You get to make that decision. All right, moving on. In addition to the red eye tool, where it is, we have the spot heal brush. Now, the spot healing brush is just that. It's for spots, right? This is not a tool that's designed to click and drag, because what it's doing is it's gathering information about the surrounding pixels, and it's kind of blending everything in that brush. And in this instance, it's a brush stroke. Well, that obviously looks horrible. So the spot heal brush tool is meant for single clicks. So for example, this little splotchy area on the skin, I can click here, and it gathers the surrounding information of those other pixels based on the center of that brush, and it kind of blends everything in and covers that up, right? So this could be for pimples, skin blemishes. Maybe there's dust in the image itself. Maybe it's on the sensor, or maybe it's just on the copy of the image. I don't know, but that will help repair that image. So again, it's single clicks for those fixes. Now the healing brush tool, not the spot healing brush tool, but the healing brush tool works similar to the clone stamp tool. We talked about the clone stamp tool yesterday, or at least we quickly looked at it. We're going to come back to that here in a second. But the healing brush tool is similar to the clone stamp tool in that it allows us to replicate or duplicate or copy pixels. We obviously have to select a target point, so holding that Alt key allows me to select that target point. So there's his eye. And now as I click and I drag, I'm copying those pixels, but rather than copying the pixels exactly as they are, it's blending them in to the background. Okay? So how would this be applicable to this particular type of edit? Well, kind of going back to his skin, right? I could target his shoulder, because his shoulder, this part of his skin looks really clean, right? Not a lot of splotchiness. So I could target this area, and then I can use that to kind of clean up those splotchiness in his face. Retarget. Okay. So again, it's just another option for edits. And it's not just for skin, it could be for anything, right? You need to change the way pixels look. It's a tool to help you with that. All right, let's jump over to the wheat image. There it is. All right, again, more review. Ready? The patch tool, right? The patch tool allowed us to make a selection. Remember, we consider it like that unfriendly dog. It's cute. We want to get close to it, but not too close that it bites, right? So I need to kind of add to this selection here. There we go. Now I can, with the patch tool, I can click and move to the area that I want to use to replicate those pixels. And now I remove that object. Okay. I also have the content aware move tool. So with that selection, I can actually move my subject matter. And if I hit enter or that check mark, it's going to move my subject and replace those pixels. Obviously, this didn't do that great of a job. See if I can do a little better job there. Yeah, still probably need to make more selection there. But nonetheless, you can see that you can actually physically move objects within the image. Again, these are all destructive edits. Everything that we learned yesterday and that we're reviewing today are destructive edits, minus that adjustment layer. Little contrast there. And then, of course, we have the actual content aware fill, where this jumps us into our preview screen. We see the highlighted area is the area that we are using to replicate in the space that we want to remove the object. We can either subtract or we can add to that selection, and it's using those selected pixels to replace our object. We click OK. We have current layer. We can change that over to new layer, duplicate layer, etc. All these other settings in here. Click OK. And there we go. She's been removed from the image. All right, so that's the healing tools: spot heal, healing brush, patch tool, content aware move, red eye tool. Okay, the clone stamp tool. Let's go ahead and jump over to the beach scene. Sound like you didn't see this. I'm gonna open this back up to original. All right, so this is where we kind of left off yesterday, and this is where we'll kind of start to do more than just one edit with an image, because most edits aren't just a single click. I mean, well, some are, but most are multiple steps in trying to clean up that image. So in this instance, we're going to go ahead and make our selection. It's going to be the dog. We obviously want to remove it. And we could try to use the content aware move tool. If we move it off the screen, well, we see that doesn't necessarily work, so that doesn't work. We could try the patch tool. It's looking pretty good, but I'm getting too close to her legs, so obviously that's not going to work very well. So probably the best step, I would think, is going to go to Edit, Content Aware Fill. And there we can see the dog has been removed. This looks pretty good. I'm going to click OK. And not bad. However, if you're following along with me, you probably see this yourself. In this area here, you can see that the line of the wet sand kind of dips into this area here, right? That doesn't look very natural. So we obviously want to repair or fix that. I mean, the dog's gone, right? We accomplished that. But now we have to kind of, we can see the edit. So again, remember, we're trying to create edits that are not noticeable. This is noticeable. So this is when we jumped into the clone stamp tool. Shortcut is S. And just like the healing brush tool, we have to set a target, right? So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and I'm going to use, because this is a nice horizontal line here, I'm going to use this as my kind of anchor spot, if you will. So right around in here, I'm going to click, release the Alt key, make my brush a little bigger so that I can see what exactly I have here. And what's nice is I get this little preview of what I'm about to paint. So if I started painting here, well, you can see what happens, right? That's obviously not what we want. So now I'm going to line up. Re-alt that, Alt, click. There we go. Now I'm going to line that up so that I can match this. Then I'll just paint across. There we go. This looks a lot better, a lot cleaner. Okay. We could do the same for the beach, the sand. See how this sand has been kicked up. So if we want to clean this up, again, we'll jump back into my clone stamp tool, shortcut S. I'm going to retarget over here because this is nice and smooth. Make my brush a little smaller by using my brackets. Remember, I can also right-click and change my brush size this way as well. So again, I Alt-click, I set the target, and now I'm going to start cleaning this up. I can re-Alt-click, so that way I, make sure I get some nice, good, clean pixels here. Alt-click again. Not bad. Alt-click again. Just clean that up. There we go. We have a nice, clean beach there. Now, there are some other tools that can help us move pixels around. This is going to be right below the paint bucket tool, the blur, sharpen, and smudge tool. And they do exactly as you would think that they do, right? Like the blur tool will blur pixels, right? What does that mean? That means we're taking the contrast between pixels and we're kind of smearing them, right? Blending them in together. The sharpen tool would do the opposite. It's going to increase the contrast. So where blurring decreases the contrast, sharpening is going to increase the contrast. So if you have a dark pixel, it's going to get darker in comparison to the other pixels. If you have a lighter pixel, it's going to become lighter in comparison to the other pixels. And of course, the smudge tool that actually literally moves pixels, and we're going to see that here in a second. All right, so let's go with the blur tool first. With the blur tool selected at the top of your screen for your toolbars option panel, we can see that we have the blending mode, so we can change the blending mode of this blur. We can change the strength of the blur. I have it currently set to 100. I can also right-click to change the size of the brush, hardness. Okay, I can also use my brackets on my keypad to change the size as well. And you'll see here is if I start clicking and dragging my mouse around, as if I was painting, you'll see that the contrast on these pixels starts to get less and less. And if I were to continue to make these brush strokes, it's just going to become a big blobby mess. Okay, less and less contrast. Okay, I'm going to undo that. That's the blur tool. Sharpen, right? Sharpen increases contrast. Again, blur decreases contrast. Sharpen increases contrast. So again, if strength is at 100, blend mode is normal. If I click here and I drag my mouse like I'm painting, you'll see that the colors start to increase in contrast. If it's a dark color, it turns black. And if it's anything in between those hues of red, greens, and blues, it shifts in that direction. So we have yellows, we have reds, we have blues, and blacks and whites. Okay, so that's obviously would be a horrible edit, but just for demonstration purposes, you can see how that sharpens the image. You want to use sharpen very little, right? Because there's a point where even the slightest little bit too much just really, it overcorrects, if you will. All right, and lastly, the smudge tool. Again, we have the blend mode, the strength mode, and you can see just by a quick little simple click and drag of the mouse, I'm smushing and smearing those pixels. Okay. In fact, I can even smear those pixels right off of the canvas, and I'm left with this transparency, right? So obviously a horrible edit. I don't know why you would ever do something like that. But, there are some instances where you just need to move some pixels around. So for example, right down here, right? We have some of these let's get this little pebble in here, right? So watch this. Rather than cloning and having to click Alt and move things around, I'm just going to click on the outside. I'm going to drag this down and move those pixels around. I'm just clicking and dragging down to move those lighter pixels over those darker pixels. Kind of clean that up. Because they're just pixels, that's all they are. Again, a destructive edit. There we go. We have a really clean beach now. All right, so blur, sharpen, and smudge. We also have some other tools that will allow us to both lighten and darken areas of the image. So we have the dodge tool and we have the burn tool. Those should be fairly familiar to you because in the blending mode, there's a dodge and a burn selection for blend mode. But dodging is going to allow us to lighten areas of the image. Now, it's not the same as increasing the exposure, right? This is just lightening specific pixels that we're picking. So for example, if the area that she's kind of in the shade here, if I wanted to lighten it, I could come in here and brush in this area. I could lighten up where those shadows are. Or maybe I don't like the horizon, how dark that is. So again, with the dodge tool, I can lighten that area up. Okay, or maybe even here in the waves, like it just looks a little too dark. I want to lighten that area up a little bit. There we go. All right, and again, the opposite of that would be the burn tool. That's going to darken those pixels. So now if I wanted to bring that darkness back, right, I want to increase those shadows. Just clicking and dragging my mouse. Maybe I want to darken the shadow down here to really make it stark. Or bring back in the darkness of the horizon. Or maybe the whole ocean as a whole, right? That's the dodge and burn tool. Okay. So we've covered quite a bit here, right? From the healing tools, spot healing, healing brush, patch, content aware move, red eye, to the blur, sharpen, and smudge, to the clone stamp tool, to the dodge and burn tool, right? These are all tools to help you clean up images. Yeah. So let's take a look at an actual edit. See if I can get it on the first shot. Looking for, there it is. All right, so here we have a nice little image. There's certainly some things we can change in here. So for example, the guy that's walking in the middle of this picture, right? So lots of different ways. We could move him. We could remove him completely. I kind of like the idea of removing him. So I'm going to make that selection. We have some things to deal with because his reflection is in the water. So, but I'm gonna address that with a separate edit. So we make the selection, edit, content aware fill. There's our preview. Looks pretty good. I'm gonna click OK. I like what I see. Not bad. Okay. I can see a little bit of, there's some darkness in here. So okay, no big deal. I'm gonna grab my clone stamp tool. Alt click on the horizon of where the water meets the land here. Make my brush a little bit smaller. There we go. And I'll just kind of paint those pixels over. Not bad. So his reflection, yeah, that's kind of bothersome, but that's okay. I know how to fix that, right? I'm going to come back in again using my clone stamp tool. I'm going to use parts of this other reflections to kind of cover this area up. So again, Alt click. And I'm just going to click in here. Just kind of manipulate what's being seen here. Yeah, not bad. You can still see some ripples in the water, but I don't think it's too distracting. Okay. What about this palm tree? Don't like it. Want to move it? Okay. I'm going to go to the content aware move tool. Right. So again, I'm going to select that palm tree. And I'm going to move this guy over here. There he goes. He's gone. Now, obviously, I've got some issues with the blending here, right? It doesn't really work very well. So what do we want to do? Do we want to do clone stamp? Do we want to do a little bit of smudging? We could do that. We could just smudge these pixels around, kind of filling in those lighter areas. Okay. We could use the paintbrush and actually paint those colors. You could use the clones tool. Right, lots of different options to kind of fix some issues in here. much better. Yes. Yeah. So depends on your selection is going to dictate what's being moved and the pixels that it's trying to replicate and blend in, and then from there you have to fix it. So maybe you have to redo it or make a better selection or select less, maybe select more. Just depends on what you select. Okay. So again, just a good example of kind of bringing a lot of those tools together to create that edit.